Hello everybody, this video is going to cover our 2.2 notes, which are proving lines are parallel. So in the last video, we talked about if you have parallel lines, you end up with angle pairs. Today we're going to do the converse of that, where if you know you have angle pairs, what lines are parallel, okay? That's essentially what our goal is for today. So when we talked about our angle pairs yesterday, here are the options we have, okay? We have corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are congruent to each other, okay? We have alternate interior angles, which are also congruent to each other. We have alternate exterior angles, which are congruent to each other. We have consecutive interior/exterior angles, and these are supplementary. They add to be 180 degrees. So if you think back to our notes yesterday or our notes in our last video, we had 5 angle pairs corresponding: alternate interior, alternate exterior, consecutive interior, and consecutive exterior, okay? I could have, I guess, combined these two, but I didn't because I am lazy, okay? So it says list 4 ways to show that lines are parallel. We are going to write these in if-then conditional statements. So we talked about conditional statements back in Unit 1. We need to make sure that we are writing these as if-then statements. And the reason that we need to make sure that we're doing that is because when we get into our next unit and we talk about proofs, when we are proving lines are parallel, we must use if-then statements in our reasoning. So we're going to start with the first one, okay? And we're going to say if corresponding angles are congruent, then we have parallel lines, okay? Again, what we're trying to do today is prove that we have parallel lines. So that's why we need our if and our then statements. So we're going to start by saying if corresponding angles are congruent, then your lines will be parallel. And I'm going to use the double lines for parallel because the more we write, the lazier we want to be. And so we'll just shorthand a bunch of our stuff, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? Next, we are going to look at our alternate interior angle. So we're going to say the same thing. If alternate interior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. Again, if alternate exterior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. And then our last option, we are combining our consecutive interior and our consecutive exterior. So if consecutive interior/exterior angles are congruent, no, Miss Olmsted. If these angles are supplementary, then lines are parallel, okay? Remember, these are supplementary. Your consecutive interior and exterior angles are supplementary. They are not congruent. I made a boo-boo. I'm so sorry. Okay? Supplementary. Okay. So down here, I am going to give you either congruent angle pairs or supplementary angle pairs. If I tell you that these angles are congruent or supplementary, then we have to determine which of our lines end up being parallel. And my reason would be if, consecutive interior angles are supplementary, then lines parallel. That's what we're putting over here in the reason. Okay, so let's look at our picture. We have angle 6. Here's angle 6. And we have angle 9. Here's angle 9. Okay, I'm telling you, because that's what it says right here, I'm telling you that 6 and 9 are congruent. If 6 and 9 are congruent, we have to find their transversal, which is the line that overlaps, which is this guy, which means that their other highlighted lines, the other ones that are highlighted, are going to be our parallel lines. So we will say that line A is parallel to line B. See that those are the lines that are highlighted? So those are my lines that are parallel. Now, we have to determine what kind of angle pair I have. 6 and 9 are alternate interior angles. So our reason would be if alternate interior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. That's my reason. Okay? All right, let's do it again. We are now being told that angles 7 and 11 are 180. So here's angle 7. Here's angle 11. we're being told that these two angles here are supplementary. The only time that we will have supplementary angles is if we have consecutive interior or consecutive exterior angles. So I already know that it's going to be one of those two, okay? But what I do need to do is determine which lines are parallel. So this line right here, line D, is their transversal because that is the line that the angles share. These are my other two highlighted lines. So we're going to say that line A is parallel to line B. And we've already talked about the fact that these are going to be consecutive. Are these are 7 and 11 interior or exterior? 7 and 11 appear to be interior. So we are going to say if consecutive interior angles are supplementary, then lines are parallel. And I'll move on to the next one. All right, we've got angle 14. And we've got angle 1. These lines do not appear to touch, but I want to remind you that these lines can always be extended if they need to be. And hopefully now you can see that angle 1 and angle 14 share line C, so that's its transversal. So that means that the other lines, the other highlighted lines, are going to be our parallel lines. So we have line A is parallel to B. And let's try to figure out what kind of angle pairs we have with angles 1 and 14. They're on alternate sides of their transversal, so they're either going to be alternate interior or alternate exterior. Obviously, 1 and 14 are not on the interior of their parallel lines. They are on the exterior. So we get to say if, where is my pin? If alternate exterior angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. And then we'll move on. Erase. Okay, 2 and 3 are supplementary. Here's angle 2. Here's angle 3. And they're saying that these two angles right here are supplementary. Okay, angles 2 and 3 share line A, which means that line C and line D are going to be my parallel lines. Now, because they're supplementary, the only option that we have is number 4. So we just have to determine, are these going to be consecutive interior or consecutive exterior angles? 2 and 3 are on the interior of their parallel line, so this is going to be consecutive interior. We don't see consecutive exterior very often, okay? So if consecutive interior angles are supplementary, then lines are parallel. All right, we're almost done. All right, let's take a look at angles 9 and 14. So here's angle 9. Here's angle 14. Okay, again, it doesn't appear that they share a line, but if I extend the blue line up and if I extend the pink line, I think we have a problem, okay? I'm looking for the lines that overlap, and it looks like both of my angles overlap both of their lines. I can extend them both in all directions. So if there's not a transversal, then I don't have one of those 4/5 options up above, okay? I need to look at my other options that I have. Do I have adjacent angles? Do I have vertical angles? Do I have a linear pair? Do I have supplementary angles? When you look at angles 9 and 14, hopefully you see that these angles are actually vertical angles. And in order for me to have vertical angles, I don't have to have parallel lines. So when we run into a problem like this, which you will, okay, you're just going to put none. There are no parallel lines because you don't need parallel lines to have angles that are vertical, okay? And then it says reason, you're just going to say vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent, okay? All right, let's look at, what did I just say? 5 and 13. All right, erase, 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 erase. All right, here's angle 5. Here's angle 13. It appears as though angles 5 and 13 share line C. So that's going to be their transversal, which means that they are going to have line A and B as their parallel line. Let's try to figure out what our relationship is with these angles. Excuse me. we've got angle 5 and angle 13. So 5 and 13 are on the same side of their transversal. They're also on the same side of their parallel line. They're both on the bottom of their parallel line. That means that we're going to have corresponding angles. So we're going to say if corresponding angles are congruent, then lines parallel. And then last, we've got angle 1 is congruent to angle 9, which is congruent to angle 11. All right, let's see what's going on here. All right, we got angle 1. That is congruent to angle 9, which is then congruent to angle 11. Okay, so I'm going to start with angles 1 and 9. Angles 1 and 9 share line C. Therefore, their other parallel lines are going to be A and B. Okay, so we're going to start by saying A is parallel to B. And then let's see, what's the relationship of 1 and 9? Angles 1 and 9 appear to be corresponding. Okay, and then let's look at 9 and 11. So we're going to look at 9. Whoops, I probably should not erase that. That's okay. We're going to look at 9 and 11. 9 and 11 share line B, so that means that C and D are going to be parallel. And you know what's really funny? 9 and 11 are also corresponding. So, if corresponding angles are congruent, then lines are parallel. Okay? If I just look at angles 1 and 11 together, they don't have a relationship because they don't have a transversal. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to be given information, and we have to determine which statement is not a valid conclusion. So right now, I am being told that line A is parallel to line B. I do not know if C and D are parallel. So what I need to do is I need to look at these and figure out which one of these statements is not a valid conclusion. Okay, 5 and 10. So if I look at angle 5 and I look at angle 10, they share line C, which means that A and B has to be parallel. So this is a true statement, so it's not what I'm looking for. Because remember, I'm looking for the statement that is not a valid conclusion. All right, let's look at 3 and 11. Here's angle 3, here's angle 11, here is their transversal, which means that lines A and B are parallel. This is a true statement, and it's not what I'm looking for. All right, let's look at 13 and 15. 13 and 15 share line B, that's their transversal. And because their transversal is one of my parallel lines, that is going to be the statement that is not a valid conclusion. If 13 was congruent to 15, that would mean that line C would have to be parallel to line D, and I don't know that information because my problem only told me that A was parallel to B. So that's all I can do on that one. Womp womp. All right, in this image, C is parallel to D. So I'm going to do the same thing I did last time because, again, we're looking for which statement is not a valid conclusion. All right, we got angle 6 being congruent to angle 3. They share this line, which means that C and D would have to be their parallel lines, which is true and not what I'm wanting. Angle 1 and 4 are supplementary. So here's angle 1, here is angle 4. They share line A, which means C and D would have to be their parallel lines, which is true and not what I'm looking for. 14 and 16. Here's 14, here's 16. They share line B, which means that C and D are the parallel lines, which is true and not what I'm looking for. So then we've got 7 and 12. Here is 7, here is 12. They share this line, which means that line A and B would have to be the parallel lines, which we don't know in this example. So therefore, D will be the correct answer for this problem. All right, moving on. Number 10, it says find the value of x that makes line AB parallel to CD. If I want AB to be parallel to CD, that means that this line and this line are considered our transversals, okay? The angles that I'm looking at are over here, okay? So here's an angle and here's an angle. Both of these angles are on the same side of their transversal, and they're also on the interior of their parallel lines. This makes these angles consecutive interior, and the relationship that consecutive interior angles have is that they're going to be supplementary. So I know that I need to set both of those angles when added together equal to 180 degrees. So let's do it. All right, so we've got 4x plus 25 plus 10x minus 13, and that is going to equal 180 degrees. This will be 14x minus plus 12 equals 180 degrees. 25 minus 13 is 12. Okay, we're going to subtract 12 on both sides. We have 14x equals 168, and then we're going to divide both sides by 14. I need my calculator for this. Okay, let's see. We've got that and that, and I get that x is 12. So in order for my two angles to be supplementary and then make AB parallel to CD, x would have to be 12. Moving on, it says the measure of angle 1 is 2x squared. The measure of angle 2 is 7x minus 3. Find x that makes line A parallel to line B. So here's line A, here's line B. That means that this line right here is our transversal. So these angles are on alternate sides of the transversal, and they're on the outside of their parallel lines, which makes these alternate exterior angles. And alternate exterior angles are angles that are congruent to each other. So we're going to set 2x squared equal to 7x minus 3. We have a quadratic, which means that my equation is going to need to equal 0 in order for me to factor. Okay, so take a second, factor this. I'm going to factor this the quick way that I know how to do, and it's just for the sake of time. Okay, you would actually need to, work this out. That's 2x squared minus 6 minus 1 plus 3. Okay, great. So then I would need to set both of these factors equal to 0 and solve. So x is going to equal 1/2, or x could equal 3. Now I need to check both to see if they both work, because they're both positive, which doesn't happen super often. So when I plug these into my angles, I want to make sure that whenever I plug this in for x, that they give me a nice positive angle. It's okay if they give me a weird fractional angle, but I just want to make sure that it gives me something that is not negative. Okay, so that seems weird. 7 times 1/2 minus 3 is 1/2. So this angle is 1/2, which works. This angle up here, if I were to plug these two things in up here for x, you would have 0.5 squared times 2, which is another 1/2. So that works, and we already know that 3 works. So x will equal 1/2 and x will equal 3. They both work. Okay, last. If you look at this picture, this is a parallelogram, and we know it's a parallelogram mainly because we have two sets of parallel lines, or two sets of parallel sides. That side is parallel, and these sides are parallel. And we know they're parallel because they have arrows on them. Anytime you see an arrow on a line like this, that means that you have parallel lines, okay? The way that I do this is we are going to have a bunch of transversals and a bunch of interior angles. Because everything is located on the inside of the shape, nothing is going to be exterior. So our options are really limited to alternate interior and consecutive interior. We can't have corresponding, because corresponding essentially has one angle that's on the inside and one angle that's on the outside. So we're really limited here, okay? All of the angles, all of the lines that I have highlighted are transversals. These other lines are also going to be transversals, but we got to be careful with these. So I'm going to highlight them so that you know that they're transversals, okay? Now, when I'm looking at this image, I always start by looking at the angles that I was given already. So for example, I was already given angle 72. So I need to find an angle that is congruent to 72. 72 is attached to the orange parallel line and attached to the blue line. And if you look anywhere else in this picture, you will see that angle A is also attached to the blue line and to the yellow line. Angles 72 and A are considered alternate interior, and that means that angle A is 72 degrees as well. All right, I have angle 38 here. That is attached to the pink and the red. Angle C is also attached to the pink and the red. These are alternate interior angles, and alternate interior angles are congruent, so that means that angle C is also going to be 38 degrees. We have this 45-degree angle over here, which is attached to blue and pink. Angle D is attached to blue and pink. These are alternate interior angles, so that would make this 45, okay? None of these angles that I have marked are going to be congruent to any of those four inside angles, J, F, G, or H. Some students are going to think that they are alternate interior, but notice that F is at the intersection of red and blue, and none of the other angles that I have highlighted are at the intersection of red and blue. We've got red and pink, we've got pink and blue, we've got orange and blue, but we don't have red and blue, okay? So right now, none of those four angles we can say are alternate interior. We're gonna have to do something different, and it's gonna look a little funky to you. If I look at this shape right here, this is a triangle. All three of these angles together are going to give us a triangle. And I'm pretty sure we all know that a triangle has an interior sum of 180 degrees. So I already have two of those three angles. So I can do 180 minus 45 minus 38, and that is going to give me 97 degrees. I can make angle H 97 degrees. I can also make angle F 97 degrees because those angles, F and H, are considered vertical, and vertical angles are going to be congruent. And if you look at the triangle at the top of your paper, it also has an angle of 45 and 38, okay? So these two triangles here, these two triangles here are congruent triangles, okay? Once I know that, what I can do is, what color have I not used yet? Purple. I know, and you can go any direction with this, but I know that H and J are supplementary. These two angles must add to give us 180 degrees because it's a straight line, right? So we can do 180 minus 97, and we get that angle J is 83. Well, if angle J is 83, then angle G is 83. And then once we know those angles, we can come over here and we can look at this triangle, and we can look at this triangle because they're the same triangles, okay? And we can use the fact that triangles add up to 180 degrees, and we already have two of those angles, and we can say 180 minus 83 minus 72 equals 180. So that's what I'm going to do. That's going to give me angle B and E. So 180 minus 72 minus 83 equals 25. These angles are congruent to each other. So this is 25 degrees and this is 25 degrees. And you can't really see that, so I'm going to erase this so that you can see that a little bit better. But that's how you do it. And then you would just plug those angles into this thing over here. But I'm too lazy to do that because I did it all in my picture. But you're going to want to put them in those spaces. Don't just leave them in your picture, because that's what I used to grade. Anyways, that's it. So it's kind of like what we did yesterday or in the last set of notes, but you're just doing a little bit more with your information. So in our last set of notes, we were given parallel lines. We were finding angle pairs. In this set of notes, we were given angle pairs and we were finding parallel lines. Okay, that is all I have for you. If you have any other questions, please go see your teacher during their normally scheduled tutorial times, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.